Survivor's ready. Go!
Travis spoken.
Boston Rob and Amber are gonna do it.
This is a business trip, as I like to say.
You Brad Culpepper.
I'm tired of you and the fucking chicken.
You can call me the puppet master. They can be my little puppets.
It's not like you're making me deal with the devil here.
You get to milk your own milk, I guess.
We got enough rocks here, too. We could build a pretty decent shelter just using rocks.
I'm supposed to talk loud,
Direct from Hobart, it's time for the only Survivor podcast in Australia dedicated to Survivor, bringing you today's interviews, episodes, and opinions from the greatest reality show on the planet. It's Survivor Oz, and here's your host.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Survivor Oz, and welcome back to another Survivor Ozlet show, Ozlet episode, Ozlet Coffee. I don't think we have an official name yet that's good enough to go with, but I am Colin Hilding, back on for an Ozlet show after doing the Oztopsies with Noah for a couple weeks, and I'm getting tired of conversation with him, so I jumped on here just for a little bit of variety. But we are joined this week by 3 Ozlets and a special guest, which we'll get into in a minute. But just starting out, let's do the introduction first for his first time on an Ozlet episode, and first time on, I guess, any episodes this season, Gabriel from Tucson, Arizona. Thanks for joining us.
Hello, thanks.
And the only Australian on this week on this Australian, #1 Australian podcast, or whatever Ben says, from Emu Plains, Jared Lubick is back.
Thanks for having me back. It's good to see I'm moving up the rankings of order. I'm appreciating it.
Yeah, usually saving the best for last, but, well, maybe you shouldn't be happy then if you're not last. Best for last. We'll see. Somebody else who's not last, take it for what it's worth. Hashtag shut your dirty mouth. Kristen is back for her, I don't know, 5th, 6th episode on this podcast, but as Ben will always know it, making a return. Thanks for being here, Kristen.
Mildly happy to be back, and I thought I should point out this is the furthest I've made it into a Survivor season in 3 seasons, so slow clap for me.
That says a lot about this season, but I don't know.
I just got 2 claps.
Yeah.
That was me.
Yeah. Which we'll introduce who that was. We've been mentioning for a couple weeks that we wanted to expand the Ozlet show and branch out, get a couple of fans on here. We apologize to anybody who did message us in the past. There was, of course, a little bit of a period where we were still trying to figure out what was going on with this show. And, of course, with Ben away, we had to arrange things. But we've been able to line somebody up, and he's all the way from Hollywood, California. One of our #1 fans, I'm going to call him, Joe Wells. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, no big deal. Thanks for having me.
We'll just start with you first before we jump into the Ozlet episode. So you're the first fan we've had on for this show. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, what you do, and how did you get into Survivor?
Yeah, sure. I'm from Texas originally, but I've lived in California for 11 years. I moved to LA about a year ago and started working as a production assistant, basically on different shows, like reality shows, live shows, commercials, stuff like that. So kind of various different things, kind of just threw myself in there. I've watched Survivor since day one. I actually tuned in to the very first episode with my mom, and I've watched it ever since. So I've seen every single episode, probably multiple times. So,
and you've seen this week's episode too, right?
Yes, absolutely. I've actually seen it twice already. So
twice?
Yeah. I think I watch it the first time just kind of to see what happens. Mm-hmm. And then the second time I watch it kind of for all the details, the body language, the kind of things that you miss the first time that you might not catch. So, yeah.
I remember the days when I used to be able to do that, and now I just have to talk about it 3 times a week after the episode airs. So a bit of a burnout. Just out of curiosity, what reality shows have you worked on?
I worked on Restaurant Startup, which it's similar to, I'm trying to think of the show. It's kind of like Shark Tank. Have you guys ever seen Shark Tank?
Yeah.
I think that's what it's called, Shark Tank. That's the only reality show I've worked on. I've worked on some live stuff. Right now I'm working with Larry King, which is kind of interesting because I used to watch his show. And then I've done some commercials here and there. So I'm trying to work my way up. I feel like when you start in Hollywood anyways, you have to work your way up to like movies and, bigger TV shows. So you kind of have to earn your stripes, so to speak. So
And nowhere along the way have you auditioned for or interviewed for Teen Mom?
No. I did audition for Survivor twice.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, but it was just the video thing, just kind of sent it in. I mean, it's kind of an awkward experience because you have to do a video in 3 minutes, or I believe it was 3 minutes. And it's weird for somebody to say, okay, talk about yourself for 3 minutes. It's just kind of awkward. So, yeah. But
Which seasons were those for?
It was one of the earlier, I want to say, oh God, it must have been like season 7, maybe, season 8, somewhere in there.
You could have been with Rupert.
Yes, yeah. Actually, I would have rather been with Sandra. I'm a big fan of Sandra, so
yeah.
Rupert, not so much. But yeah, I would have been stuck out there with Rupert. So,
do you have a favorite season overall?
Heroes versus Villains, probably. I think a lot of people say that one, but it's. I love Sandra, huge fan. I think the thing with Sandra that people always debate is they always say, oh, well, she wasn't that good. Well, you have to play the cards that you're dealt and that you have. And I think that she did that. And, she's a very social player. She's not a physical player. So, and anyone that gives it back to Russell, I'm always a big fan of. So, yeah.
How about this season? How are you finding overall up to this episode? How are you finding this season for Kaoh?
I think it's great. I mean, it's got the characters. I don't want to get into it, but I really love Debbie. She's got to be like top 5 for me as far as like big characters. I think that it's good coming after the last season because this season, for me anyways, doesn't have as much strategy. I feel like last season it was kind of like game bots, strategy, which was great. It was a great season. But it's nice to also have something that's kind of the opposite, where it's more about the characters and the story and the different things that they're going through as opposed to just strategy. So I really like it. I don't particularly like the men in this season. I think the women, I'd be shocked if a woman doesn't win, just because the men have been kind of presented in not a very good light. And obviously there's the quote, "I want a woman to win" by Debbie, which we've seen
many
twice.
times.
Yeah, I think we've seen it 2 or 3 times. So, I mean, I kind of feel like the editors are like, okay, a woman should win this. So I'm excited to see how it ends.
Well, let's jump into this episode, and we'll get more opinions from you along the way here. And let's go to Gabriel, because you may not be able to stay here for the whole episode, so let's start by at least getting your opinions on this episode. What are your feelings on Episode 7, the Merge episode, Kaoh?
Well, I felt like it was pretty solid through, but it was pretty apparent at some point. Like, as soon as they started showing like Nick saying who he was voting for and all that, like it was pretty anticlimactic with the Medivac at the end. And like it's so different from the last one where like usually I don't think they're very good TV, but like of course the one earlier this season was entertaining, but this one was just flat. And it's kind of a bummer to see someone go, since lots of the time the Merge episodes have good tribal councils.
Jared, what did you think of the Merge episode?
I think it's always disappointing if you don't have an episode that ends in a tribal council, but I suppose comparing it to other episodes that have had like a similar thing, like the San Juan del Sur merge and the merge in like Token Chains and stuff, I thought like it was fairly solid compared to those two, and it kept my interest throughout, and I wasn't completely kind of ruined by the fact that that Neil was medevaced without going to tribal council. So I think in comparison to the other episodes with similar features, it stacks up well.
And Joe, give us your opinion on this episode.
I liked it. I was a little disappointed in how it ended, as far as it was building up to be this great thing, and then I felt like everything was put on pause until next episode. So, I mean, I'm not a huge Neil fan, so I was okay with the result.
Are there a lot of people, I have to wonder, are there a lot of people out there like, oh, I'm so sorry it was Neil who's gone?
Yeah, he wasn't somebody I rooted for, and I wasn't really happy with what he said as he went out. He said something like, you guys should consider yourself lucky, and I thought that was just kind of a Neil thing, a thing that Neil would say, something cocky and kind of over the top. So,
Kristen, I know you have a few opinions on this episode. Give it to us.
Well, I actually liked the episode until I realized nothing was going to happen. Like, anticlimactic is the best word to describe what happened. And I don't like when we have no resolution to all. I mean, we only had one challenge. So we had a half an hour of strategy and alliances and all this shit that nothing ever came of it. And it was just, it did not make me happy, and I didn't want to do this podcast.
I twisted your arm into doing it.
Kind
of. Gabriel, you said at first like how the anticlimactic part, how the ending, the medevac kind of ruined it. Obviously, an episode like this is always going to be better if we get that resolution, but do you feel like the strategy part of this episode, let's just say, you know, throw any name out there. Let's say Neil goes home, Aubrey goes home, anybody goes home. If this episode does go to Tribal, how do you think it stands up as a merge episode? Because it had all that crazy strategy, but was it enough that it was actually entertaining compared to some of the best?
I don't think it would have been one of the best, but it would have been a solid episode, I think, because the whole thing was set up on, like, Michelle and Nick. I mean, we haven't seen Nick all season, and finally he's doing something. And, like, the whole thing was set up with which way he's going to go, and then it didn't even matter in the end. But I think that if, like, anyone went home, like, the Braun people wouldn't have expected it, and definitely not Neil or Aubrey or any of the brains, so I think it would have been good.
Yeah, there were a couple of weird things happening in this episode, and I think one of them was the character shift. So maybe we'll start with that. Just before we move on, Gabriel, if you wanted to just let us in what you think about how the characters, because Noah and I talked about this in the Oztopsy, that you have these characters like Nick who are insignificant, and when they were shown, it was always negative, and then suddenly he's shown that he really has his head in the game, and the episode's all focused around him. And then all the characters who were portrayed, like not just a few, it seems all the characters who were portrayed really positively up until now in the season, Debbie and Scott, you know, that suddenly they just take this massive hit in their edit and how they're portrayed. So what do you think the reasoning is behind that? And do you think that it's doing the show any favors going forward that we're flipping the script on every single character on the show in one episode?
No, I definitely agree with that, especially with Scott with the Alicia thing. I mean, everybody hated him 1 week, and then once he was with Ty, everyone loved him again.
Mm-hmm.
Debbie was weird, but like I don't think that it's necessary. Like, at least be consistent with how you're gonna portray someone.
That's, I think, the thing that made this episode all the more frustrating to watch, is that you have so many things going on. You've got a massive amount of strategy, which we'll get into that in a little bit later. You have the fact that it ends on this anticlimactic medevac with a character we barely knew, and then you have all these characters just suddenly becoming bad players from what we're being told, and then the ones who are, you know, don't matter, all of a sudden they're the ones calling the shots. Jared, were you even able to keep up with this episode, and how did you find this shift in the character portrayals?
Yeah, it was definitely interesting. It was kind of all over the place, and like throughout the episode you're getting this feeling just with like how, I suppose, negative Scott and Jason were being, that you're like, oh, this is definitely kind of gonna blow up in their face, and we're probably gonna see like a Braun go home. And then it kind of swung back around, and you had kind of Nick pretty much laying down the law with Michelle, like, yeah, we're going with the Braun. Yeah, and everybody kind of felt like they shifted with Debbie. Like, it was really kind of surprising to see, just because we've seen her kind of, I suppose, her proactive approach has kind of really worked so far. And then this episode, it was just kind of so full on, and kind of everything that you tried to do, like, it turned into a negative. And we got like Ty saying that he didn't like her, and Nick saying that he didn't like her. And that was like a real kind of 180 for her. But I think it's interesting to see, I suppose, the way that they're shown change and shift episode to episode. It's kind of I find it kind of refreshing to see somebody not painted in a positive light the whole time, or not in like a negative light the whole time. For it to have kind of those shades of grey, I think is a good thing overall.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what I'm wondering about. Again, this was one of those episodes where if it were somewhere else in the season, would some of these tactics have worked? So, Joe, give us your opinion on how the characters shifted this week, and whether or not you think, like Jared said, even if this were one episode down the road, 2 episodes down the road, if drastically changing these characters would have been a little bit more well received.
Yeah, I agree with Jared. I think Debbie has had it coming for a while. As far as, I really like Debbie. I think she's a great character. But if you really listen to what she says, she talks about being the mastermind. I think she said it 2 or 3 times in the past. And I feel like anytime somebody says, I'm the mastermind, they're headed for a fall. Like, it's just going to happen eventually. Usually, you know, you do have the people like Tony or somebody like that kind of gets through. But I felt like with Debbie, I kept waiting for her edit to kind of take a turn, because I think sometimes Survivor does this, or actually a lot of the time, where you get a character that you like, but the character is going to get voted off pretty soon, so their edit starts taking a different turn. And so maybe Scott, I mean, I've never really been a huge fan of Scott, but I think Scott and Debbie and also, what's his name? Can't think of his name. Nick.
Jason?
Nick. I think Nick, all three of them are marked. It's only a matter of time. So I can't really see any of the three of them winning this game.
Kristen?
I think it's going to be interesting to see by the end of this season if this editing made sense. Because there's so many people, everyone talks about the winner's edit, and I think there's people gone that people claimed had the winner's edit. So I know people were, I think it was like Alec a week or two ago was saying that he thought Debbie was going to win this game, and now her edit has completely changed. So it's really interesting to see them kind of just everybody seems to be completely different than they were at the beginning. Like I think I checked Sucks earlier for the confessional count, where Nick had like under 3 confessionals in the first 5 episodes and had none a couple of them, and he had 11 this last episode.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that is just like he was in the middle of things and he's not going to have that much airtime, but it's been very confusing as a fan that focuses on airtime, because it's like I know a lot of people were thinking Nick was going to go home last week because his airtime increased. And then people are thinking Nick was going to go home this week because his airtime increased even more. But he is actually doing well in comparison to some of these people. Like, we're really, really seeing Scott and Jason's game, like, just how terrible it is. I think we knew they weren't great game players based on how they were treating Alicia. But they're just spewing everything. Not even like caring who's around. Like, how is Nick on their side 100%? Like, I was just shocked that they told him everything. And then Debbie is willing to tell him everything. So Nick is like this guy in the middle. And he was not that guy. Like, we even saw Aubrey say like, I don't think I've ever talked to you before, but like, sup, bro, what's going on? So it's just gonna, there's a couple people that haven't changed, and I'm very confused, and as somebody that likes to read into the edit, this is very difficult to think about what's going to happen in the next few episodes.
I usually try not to read into the edit, but it's one of those things where even if you try not to, you start to pick up on things. And I think the thing that's made this season interesting has been that they are editing it in a way where it's making the show unpredictable, and you can't see what's coming. You know, a good example of that would be, like you said, with the way Nick's been handled, the way that Debbie's been handled. Another example is even just little things like how this episode started with the whole rampage of Scott saying, I'm going to vote out all of the brains and everything, or he's essentially going to start with the others. But it was setting it up like there was going to be another tribal council along the tribal lines, and then ends up being a merge. Just everything they're doing this season seems to be going against what they've done in the past. So, Gabriel, can you see this as being a season that when it all ends, we're going to look back and it's going to change how you perceive it for some of these odd things?
Maybe. I think it depends on who wins, because like I think most seasons have someone that's kind of logical out there, like logical with a good edit, getting lots of airtime. But I mean, if you look at the people that are getting airtime, like Debbie and Nick's unevenness and Scott and Jason, like none of them, I'd say maybe Aubrey is the only one that actually seems rational that's getting airtime. So I think maybe that this edit's like making up for a little kooky winner.
Yeah. Just out of curiosity, like, well, you said how Aubrey's edit is a little bit more positive. It's funny because Noah and I spent the entire Oztopsy just talking about how bad Aubrey's game has been, but you do have a point that her edit is portraying her more as an underdog, and probably that she's made mistakes, but not that she's made like these game-costing mistakes. Do you see Aubrey as the clear winner at this point, or who would be your winner pick, Gabriel?
I don't think I've ever been so lost in predicting someone. So
Is that a good
mean,
thing about this season at this point for you, or is that a bad thing?
Oh, I like it. I don't like seasons where you can, like, I don't want a Boston Rob or someone, or, you know, from episode 1. But no, like, I don't know. We'll find out.
Jared, do you like that the show's kind of going out of their way to confuse us? Is it making it harder to watch now, or is it making it more enjoyable?
I think it makes it more enjoyable, and I think there's still like certain characters having kind of an oversaturation of screen time, but the fact that they're willing to kind of change things up, and like a couple of episodes ago, like there was a complete like shift in kind of who got airtime, and all these people who we hadn't heard for weeks kind of got all the confessionals in like maybe like 2 episodes back or something. So I think that's good. I think it's always more interesting if it's up in the air. Especially just the way like the show has been, like with final tribal councils kind of being so one-sided. At least if you can kind of keep some suspense throughout and kind of going into those moments, I think it's overall a better edit for the show.
Joe, are you the type of viewer who does try to read a lot into how the show's edited, how they're portraying people, or do you kind of just like to ignore it and just figure it out as you go along?
I do look into the edit. I think because I've worked on a reality show, so I know a little bit more like behind the scenes, how they work and how, I don't know, you look at things differently. So I definitely look at the edit. And by the way, can I go back to Aubrey really quick?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Big fan of Aubrey. Her game early on, I mean, she had her panic attack. I thought that was interesting. I was like, oh, she's not going to last very long. But really, if you pay attention to last night, I mean, she was very self-aware when Debbie was doing, a terrible job at getting new alliance mates. And she made the comment about, hey, Debbie's doing this all wrong. And she brought it, to everybody's attention. And I don't know, I just think she's very self-aware, which I think is a great quality to have on Survivor. And I really liked her Oregon Trail reference at the end of the episode. I don't know if you guys have ever played that.
I think when I was a kid, that's an old game, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a very old game.
I remember.
Yeah. And when she made the reference, I was like, oh, that's like the best pop culture reference I've heard in a long time. But no, I like Aubrey a lot. I think she's kind of my winner pick right now, I think. So I'm a fan.
Yeah, like I said, Noah and I, we were kind of tearing into Aubrey's game a little bit, but if you really do look at this episode, there were only 2 characters who came out more positive than they were last week, Nick and Aubrey. In terms of Aubrey, I think the thing that was most distracting was how bad that move of hers last week backfired, where I think at the time, we looked at it, and even like when we did the power rankings, Jared, Yumi, and Noah, and I think Ivan too, we all said, she didn't really do herself any favors the way she handled it. But then everything just exploded on her at the beginning of this episode, and it was like it ended up being way worse for her than we thought. But Joe, you bring up an interesting point about how she did recover from that. Kristen, you haven't really given your thoughts on Aubrey because you haven't been on any episodes where she's done anything yet. How are you reading Aubrey at this point in the season?
Even though she lost her closest ally and they were kind of setting her up as an underdog towards the end of this week's episode, I just got this like gut feeling that she seemed better than I had viewed her in earlier episodes. I can't really pinpoint what it was. I don't know if it was part of those confessionals that she had when she was essentially saying like you have to pave your own way, and it was like having Neil not here, not having the idol, it doesn't matter, I still have to do this on my own. I felt better about how they were showing her in this last episode, even though again she lost her closest ally. So I would put her up there as well, and probably in my top 2 chances to win. And the other thing I wanted to mention, just based on what everyone else is talking about, was we kind of have to think about some of those other seasons where we have female winners that are maybe a little bit more under the radar, and they don't necessarily get a ton of airtime. And I think that somebody like Aubrey, Michelle, Sydney, they're sitting in that like Jenna Maraska, Sophie Clark position. So we might not see a blatant game from them, but they could still end up winning, and it would somehow still make sense at the end, I think.
There's been a lot of comparisons to Sophie. I mean, Aubrey herself compared herself to Sophie before the season even started. I think there's 2 other things that we'll cover. I'll go to you, Gabriel, before you do have to leave us on at least the first thing here. How did you see, like, with all these alliances being shaken up and everything, we're seeing, like, the brains are targeting, one side. It almost seems like these original tribes are sticking together, but the way this episode was promoted, it was almost leading us to believe, it's not going to happen that way. How do you see the alliances going forward? Had this vote even played out this week, do you think that we would have seen those brains, brawn, and beauty stick together the way they were claiming they were going to?
I think that the only one that could fracture would be the beauty. I don't think that Joe, Aubrey, and who's the other
Debbie.
brain? Oh, and Debbie. They're not separating. Scott and Jace are never separating. I mean, they showed Sydney getting along with Debbie a lot, so I could see that happening. And after the preview for next week, but for the most part, I think that it's pretty clear cut. Just the beauties. I think Michelle and Nick are close, and then Ty and Julia are close, but not necessarily all together.
Jared, do you see these alliances playing out, or are we going to have some type of mix-up in the next couple weeks?
I think maybe like 1 or 2 episodes down the track we'll see a mix-up, but it is really interesting that just throughout like the tribe swap and everything, that these kind of original tribal lines have stayed really strong, which I suppose is in some ways completely different to the last kind of Brains, Brawn, and Beauty, where you had coming into the merge kind of these 2 alliances that were just made up of a bit of everything. And that's kind of the whole point of the 3 tribe thing, is to kind of discourage original alliances from sticking together, whereas this season, I suppose, it hasn't worked, but the upside is you still have the 3 tribes, so you still kind of have to pair off with another group to get the majority.
Joe, do you see these alliances sticking together?
No, I don't think they'll stick together. I think I think we're going to end up with like a brain, a brawn, and maybe even a beauty. It might be a mix of the 3 in the final 3, or if there's a final 2, obviously one of the 2. But no, I don't think they're going to stick together. I think everything's going to fall apart.
I mean, with the exception of Ty and Scott, we didn't see this tribe swap really work in anybody's favor. Like you said, there was the Sydney thing, Gabriel, with Sydney and Debbie. But then again, Debbie made an alliance with everybody in the exact same way. So who knows if that's going to play out. Kristen, you can give us your opinion here, because you've talked about the beauty girls and everything, and I don't know how this alliance of Nick and Michelle started. It almost was like we didn't even have Michelle and Julia even mentioned together, but suddenly Nick and Michelle are. So does this alliance hold up throughout the game, or is this just, I don't know, one of them thinking that they're on the same side?
Yeah, I didn't even think about it, but I'm surprised that we didn't see Michelle and Julia getting back together. So obviously my hopes are high that they do stick together, but I think Michelle and Nick just found themselves kind of in the middle, but we don't really know where Julia stands. Everyone assumed like, oh, Ty and Scott saved her, so she's with them, but we didn't hear anything from her, so we have no idea where she for sure is in a vote.
Let's move into the medevac a little bit, because this did kill the game, but there's one thing specifically I want to cover about the medevac that hasn't been talked about that much, and maybe if some other people had more time this week, they have an answer for this. But Gabriel, start just overall with you. Give your opinions on the medevac of Neil, the medevac, really almost potential medevac of everybody. We seem to have these scenes where it's just keeping everybody guessing because everybody's taking a beating out there. But then at the same time, so give us your opinion on the medevac, but also what's the reason you think that Neil didn't give the idol to Aubrey?
Well, I thought it was really funny how that whole scene was edited, starting out with the, or at least showing the least severe and, the dramatic music playing in the background before the doctor said his decision. But I don't know, I felt it was pretty obvious that Neil was gone. They showed his knee earlier and they kept showing it through the episode. I think that they just did that whole thing. They probably do that routinely anyways, checking up on everybody. But I think they needed to fill the episode with something when, someone said before, they had one challenge and no tribal council.
And do you think that there's a reason why Neil didn't hand off his idol to Aubrey?
Oh, I don't know. If I were Neil, I wouldn't really feel obligated to give it up. I don't know. He found it. He shouldn't have to give it up. And maybe it just wouldn't have been convenient to give out. If he has it buried somewhere. It's not like when medical's taking him out, he's going to go walk over and dig it up and give it to her. So
Yeah.
And also, I don't think Aubrey should expect it either, really. Like, it's Neil's idol. It's not like they found it together or anything. She just found out about it, I don't know, like the day before. So,
Jared, what's your read on the whole medevac, and as well, does Neil give the idol to Aubrey, or does he have the chance to?
I mean, the medevac situation was interesting. It was interesting to see them sort of come back to the beach, and I think obviously they probably had a look at them at the challenge and thought, oh, hey, we need to kind of look them over, I suppose, again or something. And it's just it's kind of frustrating how many people have like these potential injuries, and who knows, like if we'll lose kind of more people as the season goes along, and that annoys me because I really like Cambodia as a location, and it's a shame that I suppose there'll probably be a reaction to going back to maybe some easier locations to film and stuff. As for like the whole idol thing, I thought it was fine that he didn't give it away. I was kind of convinced that it was going to be one of those things where we don't see it happen, but then we cut to kind of Aubrey's confessional, and she's talking about, oh, I have like to deal with like this bulge of like pus on my leg, and then I was convinced that she was going to say, but I've got a bulge in my pocket as well, and I've got the idol or something. But yeah, I think reading kind of the exit interviews and stuff, apparently like he handed her his jacket or something, and there's, I suppose, the hint that he's given her something, so she still kind of has maybe the threat of having an idol, whereas while not actually having it. But I think Neil, he just wanted like a souvenir. Apparently he was a bit annoyed with something she'd said the night before or something or other. So I thought it was fine they took it with him. I mean, you get on the show, you want to take something home with you, he found it, so it's kind of his to decide what to do with.
Joe?
Yeah, I agree. I heard an interview. Actually, I think I read his Twitter. I don't remember which one it was, but I also heard the interview where he said that she had threatened him, I think, the night before. She said something along the lines of, like, I'm going to slit your throat if I have to, kind of thing. Basically, I mean, she probably shouldn't have said that to him, but at the same time, she was just saying, hey, if I have to, I'm going to cut your throat. And I think he didn't take that too well. So, that's why.
We had, we'd heard something like that earlier this week, and I wasn't sure if Neil was just making that up or not. Kristen, did you hear a little bit more about the situation with Aubrey and Neil?
He kind of gave a long, convoluted explanation as to why he didn't give it to her. And he said that they were just, like, chilling on the beach, having a conversation. And she was like, yeah, I mean, if I have to, I'll totally slit your throat. And he was... and he was saying, like, he totally understands that that's the game, and of course she should put herself before him, but it was just kind of weird timing where the night before he gets medevaced, he was told that, and so he just seemed to feel weird about the whole situation. And then I know that he also mentioned that when he was on the boat, he was already like thinking if he did the right thing or not. And there was something else that I wanted to say that I don't remember what it was.
If you remember at some point, we'll cleverly edit it in. As if it's
there
one
was
thought.
something. There was something interesting in the exit interview I listened to, and then I don't remember what it was.
It's funny because I don't know, even if it is my biggest ally, I don't know if I hand the idol off to somebody. Like, let's all just play this theoretically, just quick answer here.
Oh, I remembered.
You remember now? Okay, no clever editing because I don't want to do the work. I take it back. Just say it.
Sorry. He made a point that he was like, me being medevaced was basically me saving her and giving her an idol anyways. So, like, that was part of his weird thought process. Because he was sure that she was the one to go. So that's also part of his thinking. I don't know. It was a very long explanation.
That sounds like somebody who's basically covering for the fact that they want to sell it on eBay in 6 months.
Yeah, he did say he wanted the souvenir. He came right out and said that, so.
Yeah, I mean, really quickly, just go around, answer yes or no. If you're in Survivor, take out that somebody threatens you. You're medevac. Do you even think about giving the idol up, or do you want it as a souvenir? Jared?
I think I'd want to take it home. I suppose it depends how close you are to that person, but I think I'd take it with me.
Joe?
I'd probably take it because I feel like even if he gives it to her, it could put a target on her back. So, I mean, it's kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. So you might as well have the souvenir. So.
Kristen?
Yeah, I think it really depends on the situation. Like if you can give it to them without everybody seeing, but I don't blame anybody for not giving it away.
Yeah, I'm kind of divided. I mean, in a way you'd say, oh, I want this person to win, but as long as you're not winning, do you really care that much? You know, if it were a situation where everybody was against you and you only had the one ally, then maybe, but otherwise you're on that jury. I don't know if you want to be the guy who handed an idol as a jury member to somebody. I mean, he is coming back. That's another thing to consider. I do think that this shows, if that is true and that's the story why, that definitely shows that we're now 2 weeks in a row and Aubrey is showing a real lack of the social skills in this game. But she might be one of those people who can actually overcome it. You know, Joe, you did say she was very aware of her mistakes as well that she made. But it seems like she's one of those characters who's going to put her foot in her mouth every single week and then just find a way to dig herself out. They're definitely setting her, if anybody is being set up at this point as the underdog of the season, it's definitely her. Outside of this, how do you think the vote played out if Neil didn't get medevac? Jared?
To me, watching the episode, I kind of felt like it was pretty kind of set in stone that, yeah, Aubrey was going to go, and I just feel that Neil's the type of person who's going to be a bit more self-centered and self-preservation with the idol, so I'd say he probably would have kept it for himself and not played it on her.
Joe?
I agree 100% with Jared.
And Kristen?
Yeah, I think it would have been Aubrey. And I think they would have edited the show differently if it wasn't going to be Aubrey and there wasn't a medevac, or if it was going to, but there wasn't a medevac. I think they kind of make things more clear when there is a medevac. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well,
or a quit. Like I think that happened a little bit with like Jeremy's going home, going home, and then Julie quit, so we didn't have that resolution of that episode. So I think this would have been edited a little bit differently and it wouldn't have been as clear. But I know Neil said he had no faith in the beauties and that he was sure Aubrey was going. I don't know how true that is since it's like a year after they played, but yeah, I think that was pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I mean, you brought up two things there that I wanted to cover a little bit. The first is how these medevacs are being portrayed on the show. We have these seasons where medevacs are definitely given a massive edit and they're really shown strong. But it seems for the most part when somebody gets medevaced, they just get buried in every single episode, which is really what happened to Neil. I mean, I find it hard to believe that Neil gave the camera nothing. You know, this is, I think, turning out to be one of those seasons like Guatemala or like Africa where the environment's taking its toll on the people and it shows. So we'll have a lot of these bigger characters pre-season or even in episode 1 and 2 who just don't seem to have the life in them. But it does seem weird that the majority of medevacs are kind of exactly like Neil. They're not really there. Do you think that this is a fair way of handling it? Or do you want to see more of the medevacs? Like, I don't know if they're trying to discourage people from going... Because you look at quitters, they will go out of their way to make quitters look bad on the show, or they'll even do like a Purple Kelly or a Kathy Sleckman, just not show them like they would a medevac. So is there a method behind this madness? Why are medevacs being shown so little of? Because it seems like it's just draining the drama out of the show. Jared, any opinions?
I suppose it's just the fact that they don't want fans to become too attached to a player who kind of goes out in that way. It's interesting with the whole Neil thing, just to do with the whole, like, people who go out as a medevac automatically get this whole thing of, oh, when are they going to bring them back and should they come back type thing. And I feel with somebody edited the way that Neil was edited, like, I don't think it's a sure thing that he gets back in the game. I think we saw with Caleb, we got this huge positive edit for a medevac, and it kind of feels like he's coming back no matter what at some point in time. But with Neil, it was almost the complete opposite of just, we're not going to show too much of this person, just, I suppose, the important story points about him finding an idol. And that was really kind of the extent of his story in a way. It was just Neil's found an idol, and then it was relevant because he didn't kind of hand it off, and that's why it was included. But other than that, he didn't really get much character shown in the season.
Joe, how do you feel about the way medevacs are edited on the season, or all seasons?
I like this one. I felt like it wasn't too long, and they didn't focus just on Neil. It was kind of on everybody and how it's kind of a shared experience that they're all not doing so well. I like that it didn't just fade to black after he left, like you had Aubrey's confessional, and I just thought that was kind of an interesting way that they framed it. I mean, I'm not a huge fan, obviously, of the medical evacs. They screw with the game. They just kind of mess up the whole end of the game. So, but it's okay. I mean, I feel like they do it differently each time, so I'm okay with it.
Kristen?
I'm hoping that this episode still sets up a bit of what happens afterwards, so it makes sense why we were seeing everything we saw. But to be fair, I did just bring up the Sucks confessional count, and overall, or Sydney, and is tied with Michelle. And in his last episode, he had 5, which is higher than about at least half the cast. So I don't think that he was, like, he just seems kind of quiet because he was playing more of an under-the-radar game, I think. And then when he was on the Swap Tribe, he wasn't shown much because they didn't have to do anything. But I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that.
Well, Jared, you brought up something interesting about, his storyline with the idol. But let's be honest here. They could have edited that completely out of the show. We could have just been led to believe that, because nobody out there knows other than Aubrey that he had an idol, really. And he has a bulge in his pocket, but he wasn't, from what we saw in the episode this week, he wasn't the target. So they could have edited out everything to do with the idol. They could have edited out him finding the idol. They could have cut out, the scenes with Aubrey saying, "Oh, he didn't give me the idol," and they could have cut out everybody saying, "Yeah, we found the bulge in his pocket," and it's not that he's really happy. That could have been eliminated completely from the show. So does that leave Neil with anything? Like, can we really believe that this is all there was to Neil in the show? Any opinions on that?
I think that there was probably more, but I just think that as a fan of the show, I feel like he was very kind of game orientated and just focused on I suppose making moves and setting himself up, and while that may make you a good player, it doesn't necessarily make for good TV, and while you've got like these bigger characters, I suppose that airtime just tends to go to them. I mean, it's interesting with the idol, like as you mentioned, like they could have just got rid of completely, and I suppose it brings up questions of, are they going to kind of re-hide an idol now that one's out of the game? Like, do we put an idol on the merge beach to make up for that?
Joe?
I'm sorry, what was the question again? I got lost in all
the whether or not they could have just edited this out. Do you think there was anything else we could have had for Neil's story on the season? Anything that would have helped him be more memorable as a medevac? I
felt Neil was kind of awkward on TV. I mean, some people make great TV, like Debbie, and then you have people like Neil who are just kind of... he seems like he's an introvert. He's kind of awkward, and that's fine, but that doesn't necessarily make great TV. So I feel like they didn't have a lot to work with, and they did what they could with the footage that they had.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if anybody out there agrees. We don't have to go around for everybody, but if anybody agrees, just let me know. Are we seeing this now as a season that is maybe like Guatemala, that the environment is affecting the people too much? Anybody think that?
Did that happen in Guatemala? Guatemala is my favorite season. I can't be that bad.
Well, yeah, Guatemala, definitely the environment affected the people, especially from what they say about it.
Yeah, I think that was considered the hardest season, except for this one. This is the new, supposedly the hardest one, but the one that they went through the most was Guatemala, supposedly. So,
I mean, it's not the first time it has happened like this, because I think there's definitely been a drop-off even in the big characters like Debbie in the last few weeks, and we're sitting here thinking, well, what else did they have for Neil other than this idol story, which was completely irrelevant? Africa's a good example. Again, not that these are bad seasons, but people from Africa have come on this show and people who I'm fans of, and they're like, oh, I just wasn't myself because it was so harsh out there. Kelly said that, T-Bird said that. I mean, everybody said the environment affected them. If you look at Australian Outback, it reached a point. Noah and I asked this question on the Oztopsy a few days ago about whether the rewards are going to be beefed up now because these people are taking a beating. But you look at Australian Outback, there was the one fire challenge where everybody was just dying, and Probst basically came and said, hey, I can see you guys don't have anything left in you, so let's do something about that. I don't know if that's going to happen at this point going forward, but Jared, do you think that the characters are kind of losing a bit of their steam at this point?
I don't know. It's hard to say. I think certain characters, I don't know if they're losing their steam, but they're kind of just wearing a bit thin. Like, I feel like Ty's kind of dropped off the radar in some way, and he's potentially not as enjoyable to watch. But I think that's mainly just the situation that he's kind of in. But yeah, I could see that happening. I could see kind of it taking its toll, and everybody kind of losing a bit of steam and coming across as a bit flat.
Joe, do you see any characters specifically that are kind of slowing down a little bit or maybe losing some of their life? And do you think that those reward challenges will be really improved from this point forward?
I feel like I agree with you on Africa, because I obviously love Survivor, but Africa was just not a fun season to watch because it seemed like everybody was just tired and they just didn't want to get out of bed or get out of the shelter, so to speak. But no, I mean, I don't think that this environment, I think it's bad, obviously, but I don't think that it's stopping them from, doing the things that they would do and acting normal and things like that. So I don't think it's affected the season that much, other than obviously the medevacs. So, and then what was the other question about the challenge?
Do you think the reward challenges are going to be bigger and better now, especially with the beating these people are taking?
I really feel like they should go easier on them for the reward challenges. Actually, speaking of challenges, the immunity challenge was terrible again.
Yeah.
I'm so tired of seeing that challenge. It's ridiculous. But, I mean, I feel like they should go easier on them as far as, you have to look at how the environment is and also judge the contestants. So, yeah.
Kristen, any opinions on any of those topics?
Yeah, I think generally they're probably more tired, but I think that the editors may be doing a good job and the production crew might be doing a good job of getting them kind of amped up in their confessionals, because you still see like Debbie's personality shining in her confessionals, and a little bit of Ty and like even Jason, who we only see him lying around in a shelter, but when he's in his confessionals, he's kind of like yelling about shoving people in lockers. So at least we're getting some sort of energy through confessionals, even if they might be spending a lot of their days laying around in the shelter. And then I wanted to backtrack really quick to my brain is not working today. Move on.
Moving on.
Oh, wait, I remembered.
Okay, go for it. No clever editing. This is Kristen, everybody.
I do this every time. You were talking earlier, I didn't get a turn, but we were talking
My apologies!
You were talking earlier about the Neil Idol edit, and I don't know if it's fan fiction, but there might be, like, if people are thinking Aubrey is like stepping up and is a potential winner, that could just be part of like making her the underdog. Knowing that there was this idol that could have been hers and she got saved from Neil's medevac, and it could almost be like not Neil's story, but it could be part of her story. But I could be completely making that up as well.
I actually agree with her on that. I think that'd be a really great story to, like what was it, day 2, she kind of had her breakdown or whatever, and then she recovers and she has the Neil issue, and you know what I mean? Like, I think it could be a great story for Aubrey. For a winner anyways.
Well, I mean, before we move on to the last part of the episode, or the last predictions, I guess, and everything, Aubrey's the last thing I want to talk about, because she's become the focal point of the last 2 episodes, for better or worse. And really, I think it's one of 2 things, and let's just get quick opinions here on which one it is. Is Aubrey being set up right now as the underdog, or is this more along the lines of what Noah and I talked about, was that she is now just Tammy to John Carroll in Marquesas, where because Neil's gone, they need to start building up a character who's probably going to be gone next in the next 1 or 2 weeks, and that this is just sort of, well, let's give her a big send-off so it means something. Which one do you think it is, Jared?
I think she's been setting up as an underdog. I think she has the potential to kind of be that scrappy player who kind of survives a 1 vote, 2 vote, 3 votes. I don't know. I don't get the feeling that she gets to the end. But I do think that I suppose they want to kind of set somebody up from this. Like if the sides are staying how they are, they want to kind of set up somebody who's likable from that kind of brains group, especially with like the Brawns getting this really kind of over the top negative kind of edit. If they can kind of set somebody up as that likable person, I suppose it makes a potential Pagongi a bit more interesting if you've got somebody who you're rooting for to kind of make it through that.
Joe, do you still think it's the underdog, or maybe that it could be just setting her up as the next one to go?
I think she's the underdog. I just my only issue with this season and the contestants is I'm looking at the people and I can't see anybody that could be a winner, which is kind of other than Aubrey. Yeah. I mean, I'm looking at the people like, okay, Julia's a no. She's practically invisible. Scott has been shown in a lot of negative light. I mean, he has occasional great moments, but generally pretty negative. Michelle just kind of came out of nowhere. I don't know. I didn't even know who she was. I didn't even remember her name for the longest time. I mean,
Kristen, you're gonna jump in on that, but we'll just let Joe finish.
Just
first.
read my name. Just read my Skype name.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like Ty. I actually really hope Ty doesn't win because I really feel like Ty is kind of hanging on to Scott. Mm-hmm. I don't feel like he's being kind of his own. I hate to say this, but his own independent player.
He's looking for somebody too. Like we even saw it with Caleb. It's almost like he started this game looking for somebody to play it for him.
Yeah. And I don't really appreciate that kind of play. You know what I mean? Like as far as when I'm watching it, I'm not like, oh, he's no Kim Spradlin, so to speak. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. Joe, definitely not a winner. Jason has been shown to be lazy. He's always in the shelter. I mean, Debbie.
Terrible human.
Yeah, terrible. Debbie, I mean, I like Debbie, but let's be honest, I wouldn't want to be out there with her on an island for, 39 days. She's great TV, but I just can't see her being a winner.
Hey, it's a part-time model in a bikini on a beach. Who doesn't want that?
Yeah. And then, I mean, Sydney, I wrote a note and I put Sydney who, because you always kind of see Sydney like in the background, but I think Sydney is like, I see her being a finalist as far as she's not going to win, but I could see her being like, I'm trying to remember the lady's name that was with Kim Spradlin at the end.
Sabrina?
Yeah, Sabrina. She kind of reminds me of a player that's just kind of, she's there, but you just don't really get the vibe that she's going to win, Like she might make it all the way to the end, but she doesn't really have a chance. So, I mean, that's kind of where I am with the players, so I feel like, who's going to win? It's kind of an interesting idea. Either we're going to have a really bad winner or, maybe Aubrey or somebody like that's going to win. So,
Kristen, you can weigh in on any of that, but I'll also give you one opportunity, because it's the only opportunity I'm going to give you, to explain to us why you are such a big fan of the beauties.
Well, I don't even remember what the original question was after all
then just talk about the beauties.
Wait, it was something about Aubrey. What did you ask?
Aubrey,
you can edit all this out.
Yeah, if she's set up as the underdog, or is she being set up as the next one to go?
Oh, she's definitely the underdog for me.
And the beauties?
It's not the beauties. Do not lump Ty and Nick in with my beauty girls. They are worthy of Michelle and Julia's queen and princess standings on the island. I'm like making words up as I go because I have no idea why I'm so obsessed with them.
Well, none of us know either because they don't do anything on the show.
Okay, Julia was good last week.
Was she?
Yes. When she came back to having her number one ally voted out, and I was like, this girl is 18 years old. I am 24, and I would be little bitch in that situation, and she's 6 years younger than me and handled that shit very well, and I appreciated it. And Michelle's been like, she's been a subtle, under the radar, but smart player. Like, are you not seeing any of this?
Okay, I'm just gonna quickly throw my opinion out.
If you just like watch all of her confessionals, there's legit strategy and intelligence there that we're not seeing from the idiots like all the guys that are playing.
Okay, I'm gonna quickly give my opinion. I'll mostly reserve my opinions for the recap and for the Oztopsy, but I'm gonna give my opinion on Michelle because it won't be the last time I talk about Michelle. Michelle last week came to Nick, a guy she had no reason to align with in the first place, talk about, Debbie wants to work with me. And Nick, even though he was condescending, said something that was true, which is don't just jump at the first person willing to throw an alliance out there. And he was right. Debbie's doing that with everybody. This week, she's like, I was in a really good position on Chandlo. What position was that? You never had to go to Tribal, and the only person who ever wanted to make an alliance with you was making an alliance with everybody. But she's under the impression she was under a good standing in the tribe. I don't think she has any clue what she's doing in the game.
Wah.
Jared, quick opinions on Michelle.
I think Michelle's interesting. I think she has potential to go far. I just get the feeling that this season is going to come down to somebody, like whoever's sitting in finals is just going to be people sitting alongside people who are really hated. And then the person who's kind of hated like the least is just going to win no matter what they've done throughout the game, whether they've made big moves or not. I just get the feeling that that's the way that this season is headed. So I think Michelle has potential to win the whole thing, actually.
This could be a Nicaragua or a South Pacific. Joe, any opinions on Michelle?
I agree about Michelle as far as what Kristen was saying. She has some pretty good confessionals, but it's weird because we haven't seen that the whole game, and I don't know if that's just because her team never went to Tribal Council, and so we never saw anything of her. But I mean, I really like where she was talking about Nick, and she's like, no bro, or whatever, something about like along the lines of that. I thought that was really funny, and I mean, she's kind of weighing it out. She even talked about the bronze and how, Scott has a ton of money, and nobody likes Jason, and how she was thinking about going with them for that reason. So at least she's thinking about the end, but I don't know that she can win based on what I've seen of her. As far as we have not seen a lot, so we'll see how it plays out.
I'll rewatch the episode, and if my mind has changed, I'll apologize to Kristen. If not, Kristen, you're welcome back on next week to argue your point again on Michelle.
She don't need to be carried, bro.
That's what she said, yeah.
Let's quickly move on to our wrap-up questions here. So first, let's just talk about what's going to be next on the show. So not necessarily just who's going to be voted out or based on the preview you saw. Could be all the way down to the end. Where do you see the game progressing from this point forward? Be as in-depth or as brief as you want. Jared, what's going to happen in Survivor after this episode?
We're going to get plenty more boring immunity challenges where they just stand still and don't do anything, because I get that vibe from this season.
With lots of ball references for Jeff to play around with?
Yeah, standing on the spot for like 30 minutes and saying, oh, this is really tough, whereas in past seasons we used to stand here for hours. Yeah, I think just it's all about downfalls. I think Debbie's going to go soon. I think the Brawns are going to get what's coming to them, whether it's here or at Final Tribal Council. And I think it's just going to be the kind of quiet people getting through and making waves at the end.
Yeah, it kind of does have me worried. I think for the first half of the season, everybody was really loving it, and of course, going back to how Probst didn't really talk up this season a lot and wondering, okay, well, does that mean it's a good season? Because Probst usually doesn't like the good ones and he does like the bad ones. But I'm almost worried now, is this now at the point where we simply don't have the players left to make an interesting second half of the game? Joe, what do you think is going to happen from this point on?
I think we're going to have another medevac. I think I just have a feeling there's going to be another one. Have we had any other seasons with two? I can't remember.
Micronesia?
Yeah,
Micronesia, that's right. Okay.
One World.
There's
and
never
Karamoan, I think, right?
Okay. There's never been three, though, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're technically already at 4, I guess, because there were the 2 medevacs post with Peter and Liz.
Yeah, that's
after
true.
they were voted out.
Yeah, so I definitely think there's going to be another medevac. I think we're going to get to see Storm, a.k.a. Sydney.
Yeah.
I think that was next episode. I don't know. I think that clip, if you watch it, was a little bit confusing. I don't know that her and Kyle or whatever, Jason, whatever his name is, I don't know that they were arguing. I think they might have been talking about somebody. I'm not sure. Maybe it was another contestant. I'm not sure. Those are always really misleading. And then, yeah, I don't know. I think Debbie's headed for a fall, and I think Nick is headed for a fall. I think the two of them are, if I had to pick the next two to go, I would assume they're getting pretty up there as far as their tickets about to get what's that saying? I can't think today. Their ticket's about to get stamped. That's what I was going to say.
All right.
Yeah.
It works, even if that's not what you meant. It sounds good.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
I'm just putting out there, I want to see more Sydney. She's been really absent for the last 2 weeks. Bring on more Sydney. Kristen, what's going to happen after this?
I don't know. The girl's gonna win. That's all because Jeff hates the season. That's all I got.
Let's move on to just lastly, winners and losers of the week. So again, no real rules to this. Doesn't have to be who played the best game. It can be who's your favorite character. Just who came out a winner this week, who came out a loser. Jared?
Winner, Nick. Loser, Debbie.
Joe?
Even though I think she's going to win, loser, Aubrey, and then winner, that's a tough one. I would just say, I guess, the bronze, probably.
And Kristen?
I say winner, Aubrey, and loser, Debbie.
I'm kind of in the middle on Aubrey. I would lean towards
she
her
would have
being...
been home right now, so...
Yeah, but I don't think she's a winner just because she was saved by a medevac. If anything, that makes her look a little bit worse because, like, well, she would be gone right now. She'd be the first jury member.
Yeah, so she's in a much better position than she would have been.
Well, I don't know if that makes her the winner. It makes her situation a winner, so
Yeah.
I'm kind of in the middle. But
Yeah, when I said loser, I mean, I think she's a loser in the way that she lost the
life.
numbers. Her numbers have gone, but I mean,
and she
other
lost a
than
lot
that-
of support at the beginning of the episode, too.
Right. It might, you know what? The great thing about it is it might take the target off of her, so it might end up working, to her advantage. So
And everyone else sucks because they don't know what they're doing.
Well,
Scott
don't
is such
know
a
the
terrible
end game.
human.
Okay, then you're gonna hate me for this because I'm making Scott my winner of the week.
How?
Not for the whole episode, because this was such a weird episode with so many people getting portrayed poorly. I don't want to put Nick up there, even though he had the best week. Scott, just for one of the greatest moments of the season, it's like, I'm gonna write down Aubrey and then cross it out and put Joe and then cross it out and then put Aubrey. That was such a good moment. He gets it for that.
But
And
that
then-
has nothing to do with the game.
We're
He
not
has no-
picking based on the game if you listen to the rules
Fine,
at
that
the
the
beginning.
show wins and everyone else loses. Bye.
And I'm picking the loser of the week as
Me.
Michelle, and I've
Being
given
on this
my
podcast.
justification. This is the last time you do me a favor, isn't it?
You forced me to do that.
I didn't force you. I asked if you would be on the podcast.
Said, I really don't want to do it, but if I need somebody, I will. And you were like, great, see you then.
Yeah. Next time you need to say flat out no. Or just be like Rossi and don't respond to anything. By the way, thank you, Anthony Rossi. That's pretty much it for this week. So let's just quickly throw everything out there. I don't have the energy to put it up, but we're hopefully recording the recap with Diane Ogden this weekend. By the time this episode goes up, it may already be recorded, but if not, and you want to send us a question, send us a question. We'll ask Diane if we get it in time. Otherwise, the Oztopsy's already out. You can listen to that, and Ben's interview with Jillian and Dan Foley, as he's already on his way to Reality Rally that's a few weeks away. So give it a listen and give your support to Ben. You can still donate to him, the Survivor Oz team for Reality Rally. And that's it for this weekend. We'll start, I guess, with Jared. Jared, you bumped up since... We'll say goodbye to Gabriel first, I guess, too. We should say Gabriel left us halfway through the episode. We're not just ignoring him for half an hour here, in case anybody thinks we're super rude. Thanks, Gabriel, for being here. And Jared, thanks to Gabriel leaving, you've been bumped up to number 1 on my call sheet here. So thanks for being number 1.
Dreams do come true.
And Kristen, thanks for doing me this favor this week.
Uh-huh.
And Joe, our fan of the week, thanks for being on here. It worked out well. We got somebody who's competent, who knows how to speak, and who has interesting opinions. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, no, it was great talking to all of you. It's weird hearing you, and then now I'm talking to you, so it's kind of interesting. But no, it was great. Thank you.
Yeah, it's usually weird for us to talk to each other even though we do it all the time. But we'll just put it out there. If anybody else wants to be in Joe's shoes, if anybody else wants to come on the show, I don't know if we'll always be able to work it out as a whole episode. It'll depend on the timing and the person, of course, and when we're recording, scheduling. But this is open to any fans out there. If you want to come on and appear on the show in any capacity, just send us a message. You can send us an email, send us an audition video, do whatever you want. Just get in touch with us somehow, and we'll figure out a way to make it work. And I think it's a good segment that should keep going forward. So that's it, and until next time, we will speak to you on the train.